Ahoy! Today we managed to clear the Sandworm raid for the first time, and we decided to do it 3 times more afterwards, and we managed to get 2 flawless clears, meaning that no player in the group full died. You can get downed on the ground and you can rest, but you can't full die in order to get the flawless. The flawless achievement is bugged at the moment, so we didn't actually end up getting it. That will hopefully be fixed soon, and we'll probably get it retroactively. Otherwise, we'll just run it again, because now we kinda have it sorted and know how to do it. Much like on PTR, our main shot caller and raid organizer was XR, so huge thanks to him first of all. And also a quick shout out to the other groups that managed to clear the Sandworm today as well. The first group to kill it was Roger's group. Some of you may also know this as Benedict G's group. This is the one that actually managed to kill the Sandworm the quickest so far and got the first couple of kills. The second group was Ignite, the South American company. They actually did it as a full company run, which is pretty impressive. The third group was ours, led by XR, and the fourth group was led by Gaming Gothic. I was watching that one on Baggins stream. Now, let's actually jump into the raid right here. You can see we're starting this thing up. This was a fresh reset, basically. We had opened a new instance, and we are starting out with that one shield guy around. This is kind of what you can do. Just kind of him around as long as you want, and then when you want to start the fight, you want to kill him, because that starts you out with a empower buff. This is something we didn't do on every kill. It's not strictly necessary, but it does speed things up a little bit. Then you beat your drums, and then you get ready. In my case, I was just checking if my trophies are actually up, because they were kind of bugged after the patch. So yeah, we stand over here, and we actually have a doppel call when exactly we roll in. I mistimed it a bit, unfortunately, this time. But it worked on most tries. It worked pretty well. So overall, it's pretty good. And then we go into the fight itself. Now, we've learned quite a few things over time, but the first phase itself pretty much stays the same. So, people were wondering, by the way, about my gear and why I'm running a sword. I'm running a sword because I am debuffing. My main role is not DPS, that is secondary to that. My main role is applying the rend, applying the weaken, and I have a rend on my weapon as well, a transient rend, so I'm applying all of those. Transient rend is only important in the second phase, or rather the second half of the fight, when some of the spear rends fall off. So for the first half, I can pretty much just sit on my weapon. I'm not sure if in this particular run I do it perfectly or not, but either way. You see some of the ads coming in. Sherlock is our off-tank. He's in charge of the ads, and we pull them much closer to the raid now so that we can kill them very quickly, basically just collateral damage to AoE most of the time, and also pick up the sword very quickly without going far away, because they really don't do that much damage. They just stagger a lot, so you don't want to pull them into early. And then other people have to do the lights at the same time so that the stam break happens, so we can actually kill them very quickly. Sometimes the sword is very difficult to pick up, because only one person can actually pick it up at the same time, so you won't always get the buff. Sometimes it's just not worth trying. We are kind of considering if we just completely drop that and only have a few people pick it up in general, but we'll see what we do in that regard. So far, that's going okay at least, but sometimes it feels more like a DPS loss, because the rend is always applied to the boss, whereas the empower is only applied to yourself. So only one person needs to pick it up to apply the rend to the boss, which is very important, and the self buff is kind of secondary to that. You can see Super Omega is now actually tanking with a bow and an ice gauntlet. That is our main tank. That's how weird it's getting at this point. It's working pretty well. So yeah, there's some interesting strategies that came to be also in terms of some people running full Jasper, some people running chitin paddings, something that I can explain in the future, but depending on what role you're playing, you want a different loadout in that regard. So chitin padding, actually not useless after all, good to know. For me, though, I'm running full strike protection, running full Jaspers for survivability. Now we have the ads here again. Once again, same thing, they're getting pulled in. We did some timing things with them later as well, where you can kind of just kill one and leave the other one alive. But that's things we're still experimenting with to see what's most effective and how to best do that. You can see Super Omega, they're building threat with the windshield, by the way, very interesting. That taunts with every single tick of the ability, which is very, very spicy. So, we're getting closer here to 50%. This is kind of where it gets more clutch, because this is when you know you are, depending on your kill speed, you're close to the first stamina phase. But this was a very, very good attempt overall. You can see we're getting the Devour very low before we get to stamina phase. And then you have the phase eventually, which is when everyone is kind of going off to the side here, going off to the wall. Because what will happen is he will spawn under someone randomly, and if everyone is kind of standing in the middle, that could be a problem. I'm kind of sniping the Scorpion here a little bit, kind of stealing aggro. Not ideal, actually, but that way I can DPS a little bit earlier. But yeah, we're kind of unlucky with this, with the pop-ups. He's kind of popping up right under the Scorpion twice instead of closer to anyone in the back, which would have been much easier because then it would have been a better spread of the asset pools. So not the best attempt in that regard, but it's okay. It was a bit of a struggle because XR went down in this very situation. I think in the next days I'll show you a version of this with multiple perspectives, so you can kind of see what's going on from every angle once I have all the recordings for that. And yeah, you can see the floor is getting pretty acidy, and I get acid burn here, but that's not necessarily a problem as long as you don't get hit by anything upstairs. So you can kind of sit that one out if you want to, or wait for that tick. Like, you can also use the acid tincture, but in my case, I'm dead either way. We get a very quick stamina break here. We get the button pushes very quick, so it's not really a concern. The sandworm is not turning over to us. Sometimes it will just randomly turn over and spit on the other side, but it's not happening here, so very, very easy phase for us. And so I don't have to worry about the acid burn either. But basically, if you get spat at while you have acid burn on you, you're gone. It's like unblockable 25k damage or something. True damage as well, so you're not surviving that. But if you have chitin padding, then that's much less of a problem because you're not getting the acid burn in the first place. But yeah, in my case, no chitin padding, so I can survive down here better. So if I die there, I just have to get up. I just have to get rest, and that's something I accept. And ideally, I just iframe. So now we can go back to melee DPS here. Once again, debuffing. Now at this point, I need to do things a bit more properly. I need to start running properly. Switch over to my bow. I think I didn't quite acknowledge this. No, actually, I'm doing it here already. So I am doing it correctly, but yeah, this is to keep Trench and Rend up consistently. Preferably, you would just have two people run Trench and Rend, to be honest, and have two swords, but we're kind of working with what we got. We had a lot of people filling in. We were just kind of, you know, doing things as we go. Didn't have, like, anywhere near ideal stuff yet. We optimized a bit more for later runs. You can see us once again killing the sword guys here, getting their power. You can see the buff, by the way, on my buff bar, the 39 seconds buff now. That's always the one that you want to look for if you pick up the sword. If you have that 45 seconds buff, it means you actually picked up the sword, which will often not happen. And towards the end here, it gets a bit more challenging when it comes to the ability rotation. Especially because everyone needs to make sure that their weekends and their rents have 100% uptime, because the sandworm becomes more empowered with every phase. And yeah, and certain rents don't work under 50%, especially the spear rents are not meant to be as effective under 50%. So you kind of need to work around that in other ways. Obviously, there are other weapons you could use that we didn't use. I think, for example, we didn't have a blunderbuss. That would be another way to apply some of those if you want to. But I think we did pretty decent in terms of overall DPS, so I think the damage output was not drastically lowered at any point, and the sandworm didn't become a big threat in terms of damage output either. You can kind of see me sliding a bit to the left here. I found that if you go all the way to the right, there's a bit of an issue where you sometimes just have your attacks hit the rock instead, which can be very unfortunate if it's a very important attack, if it's a very important debuff or cooldown reset. So you don't really want to do that. You saw a projectile flying in there from an ad. That's something the range needs to take care of, much like the acid projectiles up top. The entire fight looks very, very different from the pad perspective. But we got a very easy, clean kill here on this double group once again, and we get the power, so it makes things a lot easier. We are aiming to do this in just 2 phases, just 2 stamina phases basically, but that depends a lot on luck as well. XR found out that basically the duration of the phase depends on which attacks and animations shah-neshen does, so it's not always going to be reliably the same, and yeah, if you're unlucky then it's just not going to happen. So we are getting pretty close to the end here. We're getting pretty excited, but as you can see right here, we get another invulnerable phase, which means sandworm is going down and we're getting some scorpions and stamina break phase and all that stuff. Once again, I'm sitting pretty close here. I am one of the few people who can go into melee because I'm one of the people that has debuffs. So for everyone else, they're just instructed to stay away, use bow. Rapier can go into melee range, and great sword and hammer and stuff. Anything that is just purely there to debuff these adds. But it's not that necessary either. They usually die pretty quick, so I just try to throw in 1 or 2 abilities here and then focus on using the bow. And focus on staying alive, really, because there's acid under you no matter where you go. So you gotta be pretty careful with your step. And if you step into these acid pools, you just immediately get acid burn. So you also can't stand too close to the steps too early, because then you might pop up there, and then no one can use those steps. Few things have happened in that regard. You see the button presses, the range go up a little bit earlier into the acid, just to take that risk, just in order to be able to press the buttons early and activate the stem brake. They also have chitin padding though, so they can survive that much better. Once again, very quick stem brake here. I'm getting acid burned, but again, not a problem until he turns to you, which he does sometimes, but you get pretty good at iframing it eventually as well, and in this case the stamina broke quickly enough, so we can just kill the ads here very quickly, very easily. And then he gets a new phase that only happens under 50%, where he starts throwing these rocks. These need to be mined immediately, because if they aren't, then they will detonate and do a lot of damage. But luckily, everyone was on top of that immediately and cleared them out. So that's fine. And that is a mechanic that keeps happening at this point. So it's not just something that happens once. This is something that continues to happen, and you need to pay attention to that. Later we decided that this is something the spear guys should be doing, so that we can keep up the weekends, especially on the boss, so that doesn't become a problem, but also the rents, of course. So I wasn't really doing that anymore in the later fights. I think in this one I was still doing it at least a little bit. And yeah, you can see it's getting pretty low. It's going pretty well here. Final stretch, final ads that come in. Quickly stem brake, get some extra empower once again. And yeah, it felt pretty good. We weren't sure if we were going to make it. You can see that Turner's on the ground right there. We weren't sure if we should even rest him. He's going to get rest right before the end, but obviously if he is downed and not killed, then it also still counts as a flawless. I'm pretty sure, because he's not dead. But we actually managed to get him revived before the end, so that wasn't an issue either. You'll see it in a second. But yeah, super close. And we will definitely try again for the full stem brake. And here we go into the end. Turn us back up, and the sandworm is going down at the same time. Very nice, very fun. I really like this raid. I really like this whole strategic element that this adds to the game, that I think any expedition or any other combat that we had so far doesn't have on the same level. It does look somewhat simple watching it back, I think, but that's more so because we have enough routine now with it that it feels simple to do, and we know what to do and who needs to stand where. And especially on the pads, you need to do a lot more. So I want to give a big thanks to the people that did the pads, because that is a hectic job. Also a big thanks to Doppel, who crafted us gear last second, and also a big thanks to the people that hopped in, because we had quite a few fills, quite a few people who couldn't make it, and people that volunteered last second got geared out and joined us, so that was super helpful, of course. And last but not least, obviously, huge thank you to XR. So, super fun raid. I think, honestly, after having played it like this, it is possible to clear this with randoms as well. I think this is something that is absolutely manageable with randoms if you have a setup group of the main important roles. So if you have a shot caller, a tank, and bow people that maybe all have a routine together, that already have cleared it together and know what to do. So that you basically have the mechanics heavy roles dedicated to people that have experience with the raid, and then have the randoms fill the more simplistic roles that are focused on doing a lot of DPS basically, and not all that much else. While the fourth group wasn't a full pug, I think they had kind of more of a setup like that, as far as I understand it, where they had quite a few people that had played the raid a few times, but then also brought in some people that were just geared well and prepared for it. So I think that's the kind of setup that is able to do this, and over time I think it'll become more accessible, and it's just a matter of practice really. But I absolutely think the difficulty is where it needs to be, with a lot of people initially complaining that it feels way too hard, and then slowly figuring out, hey, we can actually do this and that, and this is how we gear, and that's how it works, and now we are getting multiple clears in the same day. So yeah, it's looking good, it's fun, and I would highly recommend trying it out. And now let's look at the updated version of my loadout from the last attempt yesterday. So first of all, when it comes to attributes, in that run I was still running 50 con, not necessary. You could just drop down to 0 con, or 5 con rather, and just go full damage, even as melee, as long as you have the correct gear otherwise. I'm running a strength dex split at the moment. I'm considering to do 300 strength and do heavy attacks only, but I don't have a thrust ring that is as good as my slash ring, so not sure about that yet. And I like having some more dex so that I have a little bit more damage with the bow in the few phases where I'm using the bow, though that's not relevant for stamina damage. Here is my build, also unchanged since yesterday. Again, my role is utility. So I might actually switch this point around because it's actually unnecessary and put it in here, which could be useful for some of the ads instead. Other than that, I think I will keep everything the same, and I will keep these abilities as well, because this is your rend, this is your weaken with this point, rend is this point here, and this is the cooldown reduction for those two things. So yeah, you want to have all of them. That's your damage. On my bow, also no changes. Same thing as last time. This is all just fluff for the few moments where I'm hitting the scorpions. And otherwise, you're just using these attacks against the sandworm in the stamina break phase. So all really not that relevant. In terms of gear, I quickly want to talk about my consumables because I forgot that last time. So I'm using Fall Harvest Turkey, Dex Strength Food. I'm not using Desert Sunrise because that overrides Incense. I am using Incense, which is very good against Acid. Basically, it doubles the time you have until it fully ticks down. I am not using Beast Ward Potions either because those override certain buffs in the fight. I am using Health Pots, I am using Regen Pots, I am using Acid Tincture to cleanse the burn. Sometimes I'm using Hearty Meal, which you can use in certain phases because it doesn't always get cleansed away by any damage. Some of the tick damage lets you further tick the Hearty Meal as well. So that are the basics. Then obviously I'm using Honing Stones as well. I am using Infused Beast Coating too. So very standard stuff. In terms of my gear, again, nothing changed here since the last time I showed you. It's all Beast Ward, Contagious Reverse Stab, Keen Tondo, and then we have Refreshing pieces. Mostly with Dex, it's all Shade Walker for the physical damage reduction, and then a little bit of Strength here. And all Jaspers. Again, for melees, all Jaspers makes sense. You have a bit of risk in the phase up top, in the stam break phase, but you take away all the risk in the bottom phase, so I think it's worth it. And you can see I actually crafted a new amulet, or got a new amulet crafted by XR because I wanted to go down to 5 con and I need a Dex amulet for that. So that's also there now, with Shirking, Debilitating Cleanse. Okay, fair enough. And we got Legate String still, and we got this earring, which is very nice, which is Refreshing Toast, but those are my only legendaries. Then my shield has Enchanted and Vicious as well as Keen. This is the DPS best in slot you can get for round shield at the moment because it has 2 damage con perks, illegal combination, as well as Keen. Yeah, you can't get Bane for Beast yet, so that's as good as it gets. And then along with that, I'm using the Beast Bane Sword with Trenchant Rend. Trenchant Rend, again, because I am the debuffer and because I have 2 other damage con perks on my shield already, so I don't need to worry about those. Rogue doesn't work against this boss. And now I am using a diamond on this. Apparently the uptime on that is actually pretty good throughout the fight. And I'm using the Lightning Runeglass version. We are trying to spread all of the Runeglass effects across the fight. Wasn't the case in the footage you've seen yet, but that's what I'm running now, because it gives us just a little bit more damage here and there. And then on the bow, I'm just using a normal diamond again. It's not worth the extra investment. And chain, just in case I ever need to pop any of the bubbles up top. At this point, I don't think I will do any more changes to this loadout. I think this is as good as it gets in terms of what I need to do in the fight. What I will do is eventually make a spear set as well, roll some more items for that, and maybe get some additional better legendary pieces. But I don't necessarily think that is important at all. I think these purple pieces here are completely fine, and me having the vigor here makes no difference in the fight, as well as the refreshing evasion down here being a minimal bonus, but not something that you need, and everything else could just be purple. The only exception here being rings. So again, very much doable with purple gear. You don't need legendary best in slot, much like any other PvE content in the game. And I'm looking forward to see more groups clearing it. I think there's still groups in NA that are grinding it. We had the estimation of first week being around 100 people clearing it from the devs. So far, I think it's been around 90 people, but 4 groups, so let's just say 80 people with the groups plus minus the ones that jump in and out for some of the kills. And if you look here on the leaderboards, you can see that we're currently sitting at 4 kills. No other group on our server has done it so far. We will definitely be playing with a few people from our server though, so over time there should be more and more people filling out. I think that based on how far people have gotten at this point, there might be more than 100 people who have cleared it by the end of the first week, but I do think that their estimation was not too far off at least. I think they've achieved the difficulty level that they wanted to achieve overall. At this point, it kind of depends more on how many groups are actively trying and running, because obviously the big deal here is even getting a 20-man raid together. Now that I've fully completed it, I can absolutely work on the guide, and that should be coming tomorrow hopefully, and also on some other videos, other topics other than the sandworm, which has been the main thing on my mind in the past few days. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. And once again, thank you for everyone who was involved in this raid with helping out. It was super fun. It was a great experience. I enjoyed it a lot. And I hope we see more like this in the future. I absolutely loved it. If you'd like to see more of this channel, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Duke Sloth, out.